to keep going somewhere else.
You know, they had a thing on National Geographic the other night when they were exploring all that. And if I have a bias, it's like the Discovery Channel always does the doom and gloom and the alien stuff. And then National Geographic, after they were exploring all the pyramids and things, and finding sources, looking for blah, 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 and instead of saying there's no ending, which is what I was afraid they'd say, they actually came to the conclusion that all the Mayan calendar, all the prediction was the end of a major, the 13th cycle,
Yeah.
and the opportunity for rebirth was there.
Right.
It was the first time I've heard on TV not coming to the destructive
Right.
conclusion, right? Which I was struck by. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's what the Mayans themselves say today. I mean, they're not gone. They say, no, it's not about destruction at all. So, I mean, obviously we just focus on the chaos because that is, well,
We are.
That's what
those among us choose to enforce the idea of chaos, and the rest of us just suck it up because we don't know any better. I'll say that.
Well, yeah. Same way we report the news, we go for the dramatic.
Somewhere it's written the wisdom, true wisdom is seeing the end in the beginning. And hell is seeing the beginning in the end. Meaning after you've gone through all these experiences, all of the stuff that we've created to distance ourselves from who we really are, that is the hell. All of these divisions that you talk about that we've created, these are just layers and layers and layers of gunk that distances us from who we really are. And then when we go through stuff, we say, why me? Or why did this happen to me? We created it. And so this opportunity in 2012 is to refocus, to reshift in a sense, and see the end and the beginning. The end that you talked about, meaning who we are and how we were created and are in the image of the source itself. And not all of the other stuff that we created trying to be like the Creator, yet trying to be apart from the Creator. We got to remember that we are always connected. And there's no way we cannot be connected. So I forget where that was, but I thought that was a reminder of what you were talking about
Well, I
when
see
you were talking about all this divisiveness that we've created.
I see a parallel in that, I think, to what we said earlier about the true understanding of what Revelation talks about. It's the journey to that unity. It's not chaos and destruction. This is the whole big Hindu thing, where you misinterpret Shiva and all the gods of destruction and what they really mean. So, yeah, it's even there, I think, in Revelation, which I think we've said here before. But emotionally, I guess, we're immature, and so we get distracted by all the chaos and murder and mayhem, and right.
But
And that's not what Revelation's talking about.
you're right. But those of us who, on the heels of what Bob was saying, those of us who seek to be like the Creator, but try to create how we're going to be like the Creator, that in itself ends up creating more chaos. Because if you look at the Aleph, the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, you don't observe it, you don't capture it, you don't see it, you just be it. You allow it to be what it is, as opposed to you trying to capture it or to observe it. So by us trying to quote unquote be good or adhere to all of these rules that we laid out, we're actually creating more chaos when we talk about church and when we talk about the cardinal sins. Because we're trying to recreate ourselves in the image that we have laid the foundation for, as opposed to just stop, be quiet, and know that you're God. You know, be quiet and know that you're Elohim. You know, the scripture says, "Be still," and know that that I am God, be still and know that you're Elohim. That's what it means. I mean, and in doing that, that's the difficulty, being still. Because we feel like we have to have constant movement in a physical way without realizing we are constantly moving anyway because we're the energy. We choose the direction in which we move by our perceptions.
And that's it. So all of the chaos that we see externally is just a reflection of the chaos that is in us. So when we sit still and listen and try to hear what is behind and beneath all of that mental soup, what is behind and beneath, all of that brings the rest of it to order and brings peace to it. So then that becomes reflected in the world that we see. So,
Okay.
a little bit more history. The different mental and spiritual states people have been in over the course of history have reflected the nature of the state of the world at those times. So what I want to do is sort of show you how it's changed and how we are going to change it as a result of the realizations that we are coming to about ourselves now. So, do you remember last week I was talking a little bit about the difference between right and left and how Hebrew is written from right to left and read from right to left, but Greek is written from left to right and read from left to right. So those two examples, even of those languages, show the results of this progression away from the initial source, or in terms of our own experience, show the result of moving away from that source of our own awareness, the still small voice of just being, and then what that produces, into all these mental ideas that we have created in their thousands. We can look at human thought and the spiritual state of ourselves collectively and in smaller groups and see how that has affected our history in terms of what we do in the world. But let me just mention one thing about that chaos again. So a chaotic state is always, as we were just saying, a double-edged sword. Because it is unstable, it is not rigid. So the silver lining to a chaotic situation is that it has the potential to be changed into something else very quickly. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of our own internal state and the state of the world, if we respond and allow the influence of the source or the one or the unity to influence that chaotic state, it has the ability to be changed back into that very quickly. Because it's not already stuck in something, it's fluctuating, it's vibrating. So that is part of what the opportunity of 2012 presents, is a chance to get it right in the beginning, so that 100 years from now, we don't gradually move away from the source. We move back in that direction. So we're no longer 1 degree off, like we were at the beginning of this cycle. So that's kind of the secret to what the opportunity that chaos presents is. So even in our own messed up emotional, mental state, all the stuff we can't even think about or control inside of our own heads that is reflected in our world. When you listen to that still small voice, you stop trying to control that stuff in the way that you think it should be controlled, and allow that source to come through and order your experience itself.
Nick,
Order my steps.
yeah, that's what I was about to ask you about, ordering the steps. And that's what that comes, is that where that comes from?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about that?
It comes from the thing about the steps of a righteous man are ordered, so order my steps, meaning if you're righteous, you're connected to your source. You know who you are the Elohim that you were created as, and so you're acknowledging the left in yourself, the Aleph in yourself, that you're acknowledging that connection, that continual connection to order your experiences.
And your journey, that's what guides you in your day-to-day activities.
So, is it the creator ordering your steps, or is it you ordering your steps because you realize your connection and that you are Elohim?
When you begin to order your steps based on when your steps are ordered, when you become aware of who you are, it is at that point that you become a co-creator.
And I think it's
Well, I
both.
mean,
To
yeah.
answer your question.
I mean, the order is there.
I think
just
it's
you
both.
becoming
This
aware.
is just ways of expressing
You
it.
become aware of who you are.
I think
and,
that
and
this-
the Father or the Lord or however you want to determine, the Creator begins to show you how to do that.
I think it's both. I think it's both because there are going to be experiences that are brought to you that you have an opportunity to influence, as well as you creating your own path. You see what I'm saying?
out of free will.
So I think it's both.
You either choose this way or
It,
that.
it is both.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
two
I
ways of
think-
expressing it, and I think that's
It's-
why we have the phrase, when you get out of your own way, order happens. I mean, in a sense, I'm extrapolating, but the
That's
order,
not
the
right.
orderedness is there.
The
Then,
difficulty we face with all of this is when we try to define it, try to
Force,
explain
well,
it.
force it.
It-
You can't force your way back.
I think another approach to it is when the psalmist says, "The Lord is my shepherd. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I have no lack." We look at that as a lack of clothes, house, etc. But you don't have a lack of opportunity to become aware. So you have these experiences that we may term evil or dark,
Right.
but they are there. You have no lack of those things to help you see the need for you to be ordered.
I think that inherent in this too is also the challenge that it's so simple, it's so difficult of free will. I think we really misunderstand free will. You don't sit in a corner, take a deep breath and go, I choose to do this. Because what's choosing? So you have to sort of have a sense of that unity first before I think free will can operate.
Free will is choosing to be the Elohim that you were created to be.
Yeah, but if you're choosing it from a place of, the analogy I want to make is non-centeredness,
That's my point.
It doesn't matter.
That's my point. Free will is having.
then it's not really,
Free will
Free
is
will.
choosing.
or the result
It is.
isn't going to be,
It is.
Well, see, free will. When you make the free will to become aware of the Elohim that you were created to be, it doesn't matter how far off center you are. That's what begins to pull you back to the center. Because if you're already centered, you don't need to make that decision.
I think it'd be instantaneous. I don't think.
Well, everything we talk about is instantaneous. We just dealing with it in terms of time because that's what we have created. You know, without objects, without solid objects or dense objects, there is no time. Because time is measured by how long it takes you to get from one point to another. So we have to deal with it in terms of sequentially as opposed to all at once.
And another way to sort of think about it is like we experience it that it takes time to go back, but it's not time that's the factor really. It's our own. It's the strength of our own unwillingness is what we are trying to repeal, or undo. But in keeping with all this discussion of the chaos and progression away from the source, all I wanted to do is just set the scene for everybody so that we can sort of see where we are. But also, and I'll say this at the beginning, that we don't see the chaos as the end. We see it for what it actually is, an opportunity.
Can I say something here?
Yeah.
It seems to me we're calling a lot of things chaos, and I think they're different things. And if you look, and it's just a what if, the event that we call the fall. What if that took place before Genesis 1:1? So what Genesis 1:1 starts to explain is, do you know what you've done? Here is who you are. You are an Elohim. You are a God. You are more than you've seen yourself to be. And it starts to lay it out and open it up. So going back to the circle that you drew, with the little dots you put in, we call it chaos. But that's totally different than me trying to shape my own world. Me trying to shape my own world is taking those little dots and making them into what Ron wants them to be. When those little dots are nothing but energy, pure energy. It's not male, it's not female, it's not positive, it's not negative, it's whatever I attach to it. So it's only when I shape it that it becomes chaotic. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
what we're trying to change then, when we talk about chaos, are we talking about those little dots, or are we talking about what we have shaped in our own world? Because I see those as two different things. We've even talked about opportunities, and we call that chaotic. It's almost like, to me, if I take A, B, C, D, E, and F and put them on little cards and put them in a bag and shake them up, I have an infinite number of novels in there. But it's only energy until I take them out of that bag and start putting them into words and putting life to them. So you take them out and you write something dark, I take them out and I write something. You see what I mean? That's when it becomes chaotic. But in the bag, they're not chaotic.
The opportunities.
They're opportunities. So when we talk about chaos, what are we talking about? We're talking about what existed before it was stepped on by man, or are we talking about what we have shaped into this world that we've created, each of us individually and collectively?
I think that we're talking about what we have shaped. And the reason I say that is because when you look at when you look at what's written, when he said, and the light separates from the darkness, it doesn't say that. It says light divided. That's all it says, light divided. So if light divided, then there was part that was shaped by the Creator, which is called light. And there was a opportunity for us to shape it as the Creator did it, or shape it the way we choose to. So with your bag analogy, there were outside of your bag let's say it's light, things already shaped. Inside your bag, we have an opportunity to shape those things just like the things outside of your bag, or the way we choose to shape them. And what we've done, we've chosen to shape them the way we want to. So, as you said, in your bag, it's not chaos in the sense of chaos, it's opportunity. So it's still light in the bag, it just has not been shaped. When it says the light separated. Because I think we have locked in our head, darkness as being the absence of light.
Right.
When in actuality, it is not. It is unshapen light. It is it's light that's not understood. And I think understanding, or wisdom rather, is knowing how to shape the light, or allow the light to shape itself. Because wisdom deals with your relationship with the Creator. It deals with how you're knowing how to relate, and that's based upon your awareness of who you are. Does that make sense?
It does. I'll think about it.
Well, again, what I'm saying is that in that bag,
Mhm.
it's the energy,
Right.
which is light. It's just not shapen. Outside of it, light has already been shapen. So what we do, we reach in and shape it the way we want to, and that brings the chaos in the midst of the light.
My other observation, I'm sorry about this, put this out. I was reading something too. I think a lot of this comes to not understanding the numbers, and the very two that we don't understand is 1 and 2. And I think that's why we see it so much. That's why it grabs everybody's attention. 1 and 2 also has to do with dominance and submission. And, you know, for example, if you look at a man sees a woman and he wants her, what is his motive? Does he want to dominate her, or does he really love her and care about her? So if he loves her, it is submission on both their parts to come together. And it is their coming together that make them dominant. But if he chooses to dominate her, then he puts chaos into the earth. So I'm listening to this, and it all makes sense. But I like to, I guess, look at the number and the letter aspect of it again. Make sure I understand that.
I'm wondering if part of what we're talking about, I mean, you know, I keep going back to the C for Zero, like it's a lot of stuff that Nick is talking about that I can begin to see in that. And it talked about a depth of, when it talked about what's being created, it was a depth of good and a depth of evil, and the choice is to choose to create the letters from the perspective of the good. So that duality is what created that opportunity to choose light and not light, in a sense. To choose to create experiences based on light versus experiences that are not necessarily based totally on light, in a sense. I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but...
Yeah, it was
Go ahead.
to choose whether to use that light and shape it and organize it, or to experience what it was when it was not shaped or organized.
That's another way to look at it. Yeah.
Say that again. Repeat that, Nick.
So the choice was to experience light as it is intended to be shaped and organized, or to experience what it is to have light that is not shaped or organized.
Your point is it's still light. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes. One makes sense, another one doesn't make any sense.
See,
Or it makes
Everything-
sense that we
everything is
think
light.
it should make. Were you gonna say something?
And that's the wisdom of knowing in the beginning that everything
Everything
is light.
Everything is light. It is our perception that's not, that makes it something else. Everything is light. Everything has, for lack of a better term, divine potential. Everything does. And everything that comes our way, every experience, it does not matter whether it's a murder or rape or robbery or a termination from a job, getting a degree, it doesn't matter what it is. All of those things cross our path are brought to us for one purpose and one purpose alone. And that is to bring us to a place of what we call strength, or to bring us to a place to seek light. Why do you think that when someone close to you dies, people say, "Oh my God," or they began to seek God, for lack of a better term, or that entity? They began to seek light. They feel like they're in a place of darkness. In that place of darkness, they don't realize that that's light too, because it's light bringing you to the light.
Going back to that circle earlier, is as if whenever someone calls something darkness or consider it as bad, they just fail to realize its origin through that dot, that center, from however they separated or divided it in the past.
Sure, I'm never here.
Yeah. What happened? That's why you have space. You look out into space. Oh, ooh, it's this. Space is black, or it's dark, and you have all this dark matter, and dark energy that takes up most of the space in space. We can't see it. So that's like the energy that exists just beyond what we experience as physical. That is enveloping this physical experience because it is producing it. Anyway.
Hey Nick, your video's frozen for us.
Is frozen?
Yeah.
Still frozen? Okay, let me see if I can share and then come back.
Yeah, that'd probably help.
So I can't see you draw.
Can you see the window?
Yep, I can see the window. Your picture's still frozen though.
Okay, so let me come back.
No good.
Still frozen?
Yep.
Yep.
What? Well, that's okay. Let me see if the share window isn't frozen, is it? The picture isn't frozen.
No.
Can you see me drawing stuff in it?
Yeah.
I can see the, yep.
Okay, I'll just use this. Okay. So, the next thing I want to talk about, related to everything we just have been discussing, is what religion is today and what it once used to be, and the role that it plays in helping us experience unshaped, chaotic light, or shaped light that has order and purpose, or ultimate purpose. So, just like we've been talking about, everything follows this path. It begins at the initial point and then extends outwards from it, and then it just gets more chaotic, or whatever the case may be.
We can't see your drawing.
Can't see that either.
That's, well, we're seeing a frozen. Whose cursor is that? Yours?
That's mine.
Okay. Your drawing's frozen now.
Okay, can't see it.
You're both frozen now.
Oh, I don't know what's happening.
I can hang up and call everybody right back. Rainy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. I'm gonna hang up. I'll call everyone back. Just a moment, please.
Okay.
I like that.
You know, it's another subject, because it's a tangent, but there's so many, and then we're expressing ourselves in personal ways, so it makes it also hard. But I've been intrigued for a long time, and I can't remember where, from psychiatry or whatever. We think of the opposite of love as hate, and in psychiatry they say, no, the opposite of love is greed.
Yeah.
Because the essence of love is giving, selfless giving, so the opposite of that would be what? Selfishly possessing. So we have all these misdichotomies. So we think of the opposite of light as darkness, and yet when you think of the term dark, if you think of a dimmer switch, if life and light are synonymous, as long as you have a current running through the bulb, you have life. If you turn the current off, there's no life. So darkness has to be some minimum. If you turn the switch way down, it becomes darker. So it's just these kind of things that we just think we know,
It's like,
and we say, but if we really thought about them, they're not.
well, outer space is dark, but and the sun is shining. But we see the light here because the sun is shining.
Well, that's something to reflect.
Yeah. But
That's a whole other thing about it.
Right.
And that goes
See.
back to this dualism. We think that we gotta go from one extreme to the other, when in the spiritual, it's not one or the other necessarily.
I guess part of my point is the way we set up these dualities aren't necessarily true.
Exactly.
Right.
And
Right.
yet we act on them that way,
Yes.
right? So antimatter is not the absence of matter, it's the other end of the spectrum of matter's possibility, the
Yes.
opposite of itself, right?
Yes.
So now ultraviolet's helped us to see that there's more light than we just visibly see. So if you made that analogy to spirit, easy analogy, right?
Right.
So,
Yep. Can everybody see me?
Yes.
yeah, you're moving now.
Okay.
The only one who never moves is Rainier.
So, but yeah, just what you were saying, everything exists along the spectrum. And that the spectrum is not linear either. It loops back around, twists the curves, and yeah, anyway. So, what I was just saying before we had to do that was what religion once was, and what it is now, are related to this whole process. And I guess I have to say, when I say religion, I think of, whenever you say that word, what do you think of? So usually when we say that today, we think of all these denominations and the thousands of different religions out there, and all the rules and all the rituals and all that stuff. That is the result of this same movement away from that initial source of light that we've been talking about. So that phenomenon that we think of as religion today is the result of having moved away from the original unity or the original awareness, the information and teachings you get from your own connection to source. Religion is the sort of the other end of the spectrum of that. So what has to happen and what is happening is the whole structure of that religion, or the concept or phenomenon of religion, is being slowly undermined. Well, undermined sounds kind of negative. It's being converted. Religion itself is getting converted back into what it once was. So in appearance, what this looks like in a society level, in a global level, is people moving away from religion. What they're actually doing is moving away from the chaos that it has come to represent. And people are traveling back in the direction of reality, of the original awareness that requires no formal structure around it. So just like we've been talking about in the beginning, we divided it, and that's kind of like the cell dividing. It's like in physics, they're finding smaller and smaller particles. Everything follows that pattern. So religion followed that pattern as well, and it's easy to see if you look at something like Christianity. There's something tens of thousands of different denominations, and the same thing has occurred with pretty much every religion ever. Whoever began it, whoever initiated that whole idea or that thought that was responsible for the creation of that practice, as time goes on, as we move, or as history moved further and further away from that initial point source of like that individual or group or whoever, it became more fractionalized, it became more divided. So this is what's called chaos theory, which is in math. Only thing it means is everything eventually returns to that state. But let me tell you something.
What's the second law of
Everything returns to a state of chaos if it remains ignorant of the source, and if it does not acknowledge and accept input from that source. Because the input from that source is what brings everything to order and harmony. And order does not mean control. Order means put enough structure in place so that chaos does not take over.
So would you
So
say?
that we create a balance, so that there's an opportunity to have an environment within which learning and growth can actually take place.
So then is the definition of chaos theory limited by what? A lack of recognition of source, lack of what am I, fine, chaos just means that everything's going to degenerate, so to speak.
Yeah, it's just a result of an observation. So when we look out and see things, that whole theory just comes up as a result of us seeing things break down, and everything breaks down. But because this theory is developed in a Western mindset, we don't see the other side of it. Or we don't choose to focus on and understand the other side of that, which is that there is a shaping force as well. So the constructive shaping force that brings harmony and order has its time as well. And it brings things, structures into being. And if those structures do not recognize the source and begin to act on that and begin to expand that experience, they return to a state of chaos. So you are born, you grow, you have all these opportunities, or depending on the environment you're in, you have all this opportunities to recognize the self and to begin to initiate that process. And we do, to whatever extent we do, but eventually we begin to decay and fall back into a quote-unquote chaotic state, return to dust. So the return to dust is indicative of our not yet having fully brought into realization that source that we are. Because if that had been done, there's no need for death. Does that make sense? Or does that follow?
Yes. Our connection's a little spotty, but yeah.
Okay. Now let me know if I can go to the shared screen or something, if that helps. But so when we look at religion, it has to transform back into the original thing that religion came out of. And that is spirituality. That is
Spirituality.
your learning from your own connection to the source of your own awareness and the source of your own being. Every person is their own teacher. And a good teacher, all they do is show you what's inside of you and how to connect to it. This is where it has to go back to, and it is going back to. But in appearance, even me, I was not by any means raised in the church. But when I see, like, oh my goodness, religion is crumbling, I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen? What does it mean? That has to happen, and it will. And that will be kind of scary for a lot of people in the process of it, because that's the only structure they have known in terms of how they see the world and all that stuff. But that must, and it doesn't have to happen all at once, because that might be too dramatic, but it will be dialed back so that what we thought of as structure, what we thought was the right thing to do out of our whole ego, it will be and is being revealed to be not correct. And we know it's not correct because it doesn't produce light. So we have to go find out what it does. And that is what we are moving to as a collective, as a whole, in fits and bursts and baby steps in different places. But it all accumulates. So let me continue on from there. What we're moving back to is, as I said, spirituality. And spirituality is a science. It is, it's the only science. So when we think of this whole argument between science and religion, what we are seeing is people arguing within their own worlds, and all the while being ignorant of reality. Real scientists, all the people we can think of, all of them were somewhat involved to various degrees in esoteric or spirituality. All of them.
Yeah, Newton was fooling around with Kabbalah, really. Yeah. So they say.
So
And Einstein.
what we see as duality, what we see as division between those two is artificial. That is a structure that we have built out of our own ego ignorance.
Well, the division you're talking about is between science and religion, not so much science and reality, right? Or truth. Or does
Well,
science has some issues as well then?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But no, you're right. Science in itself is closer to source than what religion has allowed to become, or allowed itself to become.
I would think it, and it's.
Well, let me say, there's also a religiousness about science. It's not all of it, but it's also there.
Yeah.
But religion itself has a lot more to answer for. So, yeah.
But I think that whole notion came more from religion, which by definition is more entrenched in certain understandings. Science in its purest form wants everything that it says to be challenged. But think about that in the last Baptist service you attended. Can you stand up and say, wait a minute, what about this and that? So I think a lot of that was religion trying to keep its dominance. So belittling science, if you want. And then I think science just got fed up with that mentality. And so between those two, you have people who call themselves atheists. And in my experience, most of the ones that I know several people like that. And they're not atheists in the sense that we like to think that means they have no belief. They just refuse to accept the dogma that comes out of conventional religion. And they're a counterweight to that. But nobody bothers to ask them what they mean. They go, oh, you're an atheist. You know, make the sign of the cross, this guy's going to hell, all that kind of stuff. You know. So, but I don't think science was so much against religion as religion has always been against science. Go back to Newton and the church and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's totally the case. And I don't want to get into that too much because I want to actually get to what I'm trying to say. But it is heading back in the direction of science, all of religion, because it's really funny. The religion and science both come from the same thing, even historically. All the philosophers and all that stuff in Greece, we'll talk about Greece and all that, but all that stuff was an attempt to understand the Creator's creation. So all science comes from the source of religion. All of what we understand to be religion today comes from that science, which is the science of ritual, an attempt to better understand the Creator or get in touch with the Creator. But anyway, so over time, as we move further away from the source, our own egos, our own religiousness begins to take more and more a hold of those two things. So what religion kind of is, well, in the way that I'm speaking about it anyway, is the epitome of, is the unwillingness to change or allow your beliefs to change based on what reality is telling you. It's rigidity. It is imposed structure, but it is our structure, not the structure that the original awareness wishes to be in place. So all this stuff about chaos, we've been talking about chaos, is lack of structure. But in the lack of structure, in religion slowly dying down, is the opportunity for what is real to influence this whole environment. So is the opportunity for that original awareness, the source, to build its structure. So the trap that we fall into all the time is that we latch on to something that is the product of our own ego, instead of allowing ourselves to be molded, allowing our society or whatever to be created or molded into something that is not the result of our ego, but the result of our source, which is deeper in you and further within you than your ego. So the goal of any real structure that is to be created as a result of the influence of the Creator is one that allows for the most free will. Now, obviously, there have to be some checks and balances, and we, in the United States, recognize that and attempt to allow for the most free will while still not allowing people to run around with guns shooting people. So there's always
Excuse
a
me?
balance.
We're struggling with that one.
To
Not doing very well.
maintain an environment within which free will is possible. And I can't have free will if I'm dodging bullets. I can't sit and contemplate if I'm worried about getting killed. I mean, I can. Those people are few and far in between.
Well, Nick, what about the other side of that? About how much free will do you have if you're kind of consumed with survival financially, or like just other kinds of oppression? Is that just because we need to make that choice, or some of this unnecessary?
Well, you always have the same amount of free will. It just is harder to make a choice, whichever one you choose.
Okay.
But Nick,
And the implications of that choice will be more drastic in whichever way you want to go.
Yeah.
Nick, but in making that choice or in exercising free will, we pick and choose based on what we are most attached to in terms of our experiences. Example, if you're struggling, if you call survival, struggling financially, then that means we are looking at finances as being our source for survival. But if you believe that the source of survival is the source itself, then you recognize, whether it be financial struggle or struggle with emotions or children, whatever it is, that it is an opportunity being presented to you for you to redirect your energies. If you've got financial problems, then I don't see financial instability as a problem. I see it as an opportunity, and that's how I deal with it, as opposed to falling apart. So from day one, I said some things that I did not understand at the time. It was one of the statements I made when I first started pastoring was, God is my banker. So I don't worry about what I have, because He is the unlimited source. Okay, if I take that now and look at it from what I know or have seen the truth to be, that's the right attitude, that my source is never depleted. And every time I perceive a lack, it is my source saying to me, that's an area of contention that I need to deal with.
But see, I was thinking about it from the perspective of what we talked about. I guess that was last year, wasn't it? 11/11/11.
Okay.
And we talked about getting rid of the tyranny of just kind of the system and how people struggle underneath that, and the greed, like in the upper levels of our society and that kind of thing. And I know that's breaking down. So I'm just kind of trying to think about that from that perspective.
Again, it is, if you look at it, you begin to see that there's a small things began to grow exponentially. Like religion, the word religion comes from the Latin that means to reconnect. So things began to grow exponentially as a desire to reconnect on your own. Now, what I see is that the small dot that's centered, that Nick drew, and I see it expanding into larger actually dividing into the denominations. Now they're being brought back together again to that center, being centered. That works the same way with finances. It is not separate from that. If finances, if money is the God of this earthly thinking, and it is, then it has to reach a point of ultimate, whatever it does, what is it? It has to reach a breaking point. And I believe that that's what's happening. It has reached a breaking point, and now the ones at the top, be they in America or in Saudi Arabia, in dealing with the money issue, is now trying their best to hold on to the chaos that they call reality. So in doing so, there has to be someone who begins to see that holding on to the finances or holding on to money as your reality is actually your destruction. And that's, in a sense, you're self-destructing when you do that, because the money is not your source. Now, if you really think about it, if money is the source of this worldly consciousness, right, and it is, then think about it this way. There's not one country in the world that America does not control because of money. And people may look at China and say, but look how much we owe China. No. When you owe the bank $2 million, the bank owns you. When you owe the bank $20 million, you own the bank. So the amount of money that's owed to them, it controls. You see what I'm talking about? So we have to look at it from a different perspective in terms of economics, history, emotions, etc.
but Denise, I think the key word you use, and listen to what Nick said, the full, what do you want to call it? The potential reservoir of free will is there. But if you sort of superimpose a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of, pragmatic daily life kind of thing, it's much more difficult to access that when you're on a survival level than when you're on an artistic freedom kind of level of being, right? Because I can think of the people in Rwanda. You just, on one day, somebody kicked your front door in and your whole family was cut to pieces in front of your face. I mean, you didn't have time to be anxious, actually, but how do you escape that? You don't. That's it. You didn't. But the word you used, that I think is the great sapper of energy, whatever, is anxiety. And what is anxiety? But it's an anticipation of a certain consequence, which is an unknown, really.
That might or might not happen.
That's exactly it. It's a future. So there's still an infinite number of possibilities between your moment and that. But because someone has told you, you should be anxious. I'm 66 and I'm supposed to have saved $1 million for retirement, at least. By now it's probably 3. Well, that ain't going to happen unless we win the lottery. But as the Italian joke goes, if you don't buy the ticket, you can't play the game. So anyway, but that's, I think, what saps your will, so to speak, and your energy is that kind of, the idea of anxiety and stuff, because it's that presumed consequence, which doesn't necessarily have to be. And if you can find that calm and that peace, you have to, with a certain quote-unquote, we use the term faith, step out into that future. But if everything we've said in here is true, the future has a wide range of possibility. But you narrow it if you let yourself be overtaken by that. Right? Anyway.
So let me tie a couple things together. It is, actually, can everyone hear me okay? I think my internet connection is dropping a little.
I think we're okay.
Okay. It is beneficial to certain groups of people to keep everyone in that survival mindset.
Yes.
Because while you are in that survival mindset, you don't have the space to realize who you are. So, in that survival mindset, here's what is encouraged. You are encouraged to want stuff to help you survive. And that ties into our material possessions and desires and economy and stuff. But you are encouraged to want. When you have the space to realize who you you realize that instead of wanting, you can intend things. So the difference between wanting and intending something is that if you want something, it means you're starting from a perception of lack. So the whole thing with the perception of lack is that if you perceive lack, it's only because what is in you as a part of your experience is not the awareness of who and what you actually are. It's an anxious distraction. I don't have. And I need, I want. So it doesn't give you the space to realize that whatever you need, you can create. So once you flip that whole mindset on its head, and you change wanting to intending, now instead of trying to fill a hole in you with something you think you lack, you create that thing that you know needs to be present in the situation from the energy that you possess. So instead of trying to stuff something into you with want, you bring it forth out of you because that's who you are. And what the proverbial they are powerless to stop is the process of transforming this seemingly chaotic state where everybody's in a wanting mindset. They cannot stop the transforming into an intending mindset. So in other words, we've just been talking about in chaos there's an opportunity. The opportunity that we here are recognizing is the chance to flip this whole thing upside down and inside out. And make up for any perception of lack by the very power that we have because of who and what we were created to be. We fill that space. We don't go searching for things to fill the space we perceive. And it's a delicate dance that we do with our own anxiety, that we do with our own sense of spirituality and what we know. We go back and forth, back and forth. Were we to commit fully to what we are studying now, we would go through some absolute hell. Worse than anything we've experienced. But if that was done, that will be the last time we ever needed to experience that. So this is just how much we want to take on the spoon at once.
Nick,
Yeah?
Wednesday is 12-12-12. What's the significance of that? And there are 5 Saturdays in this month and 5 Sundays.
Well, let's go back to the Everybody see that drawing?
Yeah.
So this Wednesday is connected to whatever day the 21st is. Because these are the same. So, and, oh my goodness, I keep thinking of the stuff that I know I have written somewhere on these pages that I want to get to, but, you know, we just gotta go how it goes. When you see dates like this is because these two are harmonically connected. So everything is the same, right? It's just a matter of frequency, of degree, of strength of that same thing. Okay? So when you see stuff like this, that's what it means. These two are related. So what was that thing you said with the 5 Wednesdays?
No, 5 Saturdays and 5 Sundays.
5 Saturdays and 5 Sundays between
In
The
December.
end of 2012.
Okay. Starting from when?
In December.
Month of December.
In the month of December.
Oh, the very beginning. Okay. 5. Let's look at that. So, I'll just use the same thing. So 5. Get out of here. 5 Saturdays. 5 Sundays. So Saturday is actually let me come to a new thing, a new piece of paper here. Five Saturdays between now and the end of the world. 5 Sundays between now and the end of the world. Oh, I love. Okay, let me show you what I got off of this. So Saturday the word Saturday comes from Saturn. Sunday comes from sun. So Saturday is also Shabbat. That is the shadow of death. If you know I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
Yeah,
that's that.
okay.
Sunday is the opposite of that. Sunday is light. So we have an equal amount of each of these between the beginning of this month and the end of this month. Whenever you have an equal division, you have the number 2. 2 is about choice.
Wow.
Which do you want? You will decide at the end of the month.
Doesn't that go back to the scripture that says
Oh, you have
in
more-
Deuteronomy, choose life?
Yeah.
To life.
You know what I'm saying? Okay.
It also represents 2 principles of religion, right?
Yeah.
World religion.
Say that again? Or can I ask a question?
Say that again.
Two principles of worldly religion, or 2 holy days, based on what your beliefs are.
So the other factor may be December as opposed to November or October, September. There are more of these choice periods. So it's maybe a heightened, energy period. That's maybe not the right way to say it. You know what I mean? Maybe, so how many Saturdays and Sundays do we have or how many equal maybe is,
But remember, I was asking you if you're having the same experiences that I'm having right now. It's like everything that can
okay,
happen
is happening.
is happening
Or certainly more than
in the
before.
or much more, and the choice is how I choose to view it.
I think we need to back up to what Ron was saying. You got Judaism and Christianity on that board. And each one of those is a holy day for the other. Is the light on those Sundays artificial? And the death is the death of what we call light? Because on Shabbat, what happens? Everything external shuts down and goes to the spiritual. So the question is, what is the death of?
Yeah.
And what is that light? Because we created, if we're going by what's in the scriptures and the broader religion, the creation of Sundays came from Christianity.
Exactly.
And Shabbat came from Judaism, and if you look at it, those are the major days, the holy days of worship. So of submission, is submission. So the question is, what are you submitting to?
And that goes back to what I was saying in the first time. 1 and 2, if you understand submission and dominance, you see whether or not you're talking about right and left, whether you're talking about up and down, east and west, it's all about what you submit to. You only submit to something if you want to become one with it. You want to be intimate with it. If not, you dominate it. So that's what we're dealing with all the time. And every other number that we deal with comes out of those 2.
See, listen to what Nick said. Shadow of death. Though I walk through the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Why? Because thou art with me. You see?
Yeah.
So is it the shadow of death that's bringing the death to what we have created?
Okay,
Yeah.
back to the chaos.
Yeah.
Death of artificial life.
Yeah.
Yeah, the death of artificial light.
Okay.
So, what so what we are here to experience as those who are present in Earth at this time is yet another opportunity to not have to go through the cycles again. And I'm talking about on like a global collective level. So instead of looping back around like we keep doing, we can use this as a starting point and go to the next level, for lack of a better term. So we can get it right in the beginning, because when we return to a state that is similar to the beginning, we have another opportunity to do so. And that is what this whole time period is.
Well, to say it crudely, I guess, you'd have an easier way of it, right? It doesn't mean post this day, it can't happen. But now
Right.
you have to find your way out of a denser wilderness, so to speak, or a sense
Well,
of wilderness.
It's an opportunity in the sense that it's
Right,
there's much less resistance.
right,
There's much less stuff that we'll have to do to get back to that same opportunity.
right.
And it's kind of like it's being presented at a time when we have to make a choice that will determine the next 25,600 something years or whatever,
That's
which
all.
is actually the cycle that we're in, which is the ending of the Mayan calendar. Because that was the last time a choice was made, and we're still here, so apparently, I don't know.
And we'll be here 26,000 years from now. It might not be us, but we'll be here
Well,
because
but
it's just a renewal of life.
yeah, I mean, no pressure on the day, right? We're just carrying forward the opportunity for future generations, or we're gonna screw it up for them.
No, no pressure.
No pressure, okay.
But that's the way we ought to see it, really.
But that's what's happening.
But then you can't force it though at the same time, so that's the paradox.
Right.
You can't sit in the corner and make yourself meditate and have an open mind,
Right.
a free mind. You can't do it. It's like don't think about an elephant, right?
Yeah. And neither can
That's
you
the-
sit there and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
But that's the trick of
Yeah,
free
just
will,
be.
that's what I meant. That's, okay. Anyway, we'll do what we do.
And,
So
yeah,
as it's done,
we
it's
just-
written.
It's, we all this pressure and stuff, this same cycle has the potential to affect in what appears to be obvious to us as the external world. It has the ability to affect many, many, many more people sort of at once, but it's the same choice that we make every single second of every single day.
Right.
It really is. And it's just now that we may have to face the consequences of that choice, whatever they will be, on a more global scale, even though we've already seen some of those consequences sort of have more of an effect. It just keeps going in that direction.
Well, if we go back to your earlier comment about if a point is off center or whatever, off true whatever by a millimeter, if you extend that out into the future, so to speak, or distance, it's profoundly, making that analogy about there being a huge distance between now what are 2 points, right, which was unity at one point. But what that means, if you turn that around in a more positive sense, anything that comes of any genuine intent extrapolates to a future that by definition has to be, if I can use the term, much more positive, even though we don't know what it'll be.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so not knowing the outcome is not an excuse for not making the effort.
No, that's right.
But the effort has to be done honestly. Can't be forced.
Honest effort
Or it'll be less of an effort. I guess it can be, but
And no preconceived, well, actually, if it's not a genuine effort, it's not an effort.
and I think what you just said is important too. Conception of what? If we're back to what Nick said about, or what Ron, I guess, stimulated about, or Nick said, between the two, between wanting and intending.
Yeah,
We don't know what to want, and that's limiting anyway. So we have the freedom to simply intend. And if we set the direction of our intention,
yeah, just.
the rest of it is gonna be.
Yeah,
And we ain't gonna be around to see it anyway, so, or we'll get maybe parts of it, but.
So be it.
So it be. So what is that? So let it be said, so let it be written, so let it be written. What's that whole Egyptian thing? Right.
Does anyone have any other questions or anything? Because I have reached the point where I feel like we are done for today.
So go home and play a lot of
I
John
guess
Lennon.
that's it.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Right on time, Brother Jimmy.
The truth of the light that we are, and the light of the truth that we are, has us to know that we are not reactors, we are creators. Amen.